Hi everyone, I'm Lisa. I'm 35 years old and a doctor once told me that I have a 1% chance of having a baby. This channel is for anybody who's been told that they're facing impossible odds. The summer leading up to my diagnosis, I had recently been married, I was in grad school, I had just switched jobs. There was a lot going on in my life. For years, I had been struggling with fatigue. I remember always being tired. It got to the point where I had a manager who commented about it and said, "You should check your thyroid." I didn't take it seriously because I was pretty young then and infallible. Nothing could go wrong with me. I was just tired. And over the years, that became normal. But then, adding on to the fatigue, in that summer of 2021, I was getting so many night sweats, and that just made me exhausted because I wasn't sleeping. I had brain fog all the time. I was angry and I didn't know why. I would have these horrible, destructive mood swings. And I would feel pain sometimes in my ovaries. I don't think it was endo. It was more of like this sensation, like a tingling sensation, almost just like an acute awareness. It felt to me like my ovaries were shriveling up inside of me. And I even remember telling my husband at one point, "I feel my ovaries dying inside of me." This was before a diagnosis. This is before I knew anything was wrong. And then around August of 2021, I missed my period. And for several reasons, I knew that I wasn't pregnant. So I went to the gynecologist. I figured, hey, it had been a while since I had my annual exam. Why not just go and check it out, see what's going on, and get my checkup in the meantime? So that's what I did. I went and I saw a gynecologist. She was new to me, but she checked me out and she said, there are a lot of changes going on in your life. This does look like anovulation. Anovulation meaning your body didn't ovulate or release an egg. And so that's why you missed your period. There are several reasons for that, but she told me that it's likely stress because I am young and I don't have any other symptoms that I knew of. A lot of the symptoms that I had could have been confused with just being stressed out. And then she was like, are you thinking of starting a family? And I said, sure, I am actually. I just got married and I'm finishing this grad program. Once I'm done with that, it would be a good time for me to start. So she said, you're, 32? Yeah, you're 32. So she said, you're 32 years old. Let's just check your hormones. I didn't think that anything could be wrong with me. And so when she asked if she could check my hormones, it almost seemed as if she was planning for my future, helping me, get ahead if I wanted to have this family that I talked about. And I'm actually really grateful that she did do that. I've heard stories from other women where they've gone to doctors who didn't take them seriously and the disease was able to progress because of that. But because she did check me out and she checked my hormones, I was able to catch it. Then the results came back. My October 2021 labs were an AMH less than 0.015, estradiol of 21.3, and an FSH of 34.6. She was like, I think the lab messed up your results. This must be a mix-up. These can't be your results. So I'd like you to come back into the office to retest. So I did come back the next day and I went to retest. And while I was there, she took me to her office and she said, the reason that I wanted to retest these was because these results they look like they're from a woman who's in menopause already. And that shook me a little bit, but not enough to really scare me. I thought that, she must be right. I thought that these things happen to other people. You never think that these things could happen to you. Something deep inside me, though, did know that this was the reality, but there was still the denial. And there was just the hope, the waiting to see if maybe those were a mistake. I got my blood work done again, and the results were confirmed. They were pretty much the same. Obviously the AMH doesn't really change. And my FSH was extremely elevated and my estradiol was very low. So she told me that if I wanted to have a genetic connection to my children, that I needed to see a reproductive endocrinologist immediately, and the best one. I was absolutely devastated. I cried and cried for weeks, and the diagnosis was really confusing for me. It felt like I entered the wrong timeline. It took years for me to come to terms with my diagnosis, and I really, really wish that I had gotten mental health support sooner. After the diagnosis, I went to work. I did my best. I went to school. I did my best. I sought all of the medical help I could. I did my best. And when I got home, I would completely fall apart on my husband. I felt like my body was going through life for me as my representative. I felt like I was loosely tethered to it, just sort of observing from far away. After months of feeling so disconnected from myself, I decided that I had had enough. I wanted to feel like myself again. And so that's when I decided that I needed to seek professional help. Not just for the fertility stuff, but now for the trauma of what I was going through. A psychologist once told me that seeking mental health support is a part-time job, but it's the best job that you can do. I cycled through providers until I found a psychiatrist that actually listened to me. I told her that I knew that I wasn't myself, and my intuition told me that a big part of this was the hormonal fluctuations that I was facing. I knew I needed therapy, but at the same time, I needed something in my toolkit immediately to help me through those ups and downs, to help me through the rise and fall of my hormones, and to help me regulate when I was in crisis. And that's when I got an antidepressant. At first, I didn't want to get it because I had been told my whole life that antidepressants just suppress who you are, and then you kind of go through life as a zombie. And the last thing that I wanted was to feel less like myself. In fact, what convinced me to take it was when my psychiatrist told me that that's not what it does, that the goal of an antidepressant is to make you feel more like yourself. And that is what I wanted. So I ended up doing it, and I'm so glad that I did. It changed my entire life. I was finally able to recognize myself. I was able to laugh again, to genuinely laugh at something I hadn't done for so long. I didn't cry as much anymore. I wasn't as emotionally reactive to situations. And, it was just a smoother ride. And going through what I was going through was not an easy task. I was seeking help from medical professionals with a very, very misunderstood diagnosis. A lot of them didn't understand what I was going through. They didn't know what the latest research was because there's so few women comparatively that go through this that they didn't really need to know. I was sometimes the first time that they had ever seen a case like that. And so I really needed to be myself and to feel like myself in order to persevere through it. Alongside all of this, I was seeking medical help from different reproductive endocrinologists. I probably saw between 7 and 10 specialists in New York City alone. The first from a very well-known institution and one of the best in the city. She told me that in her 20 years, that she had only seen one patient get pregnant with my condition. I asked her if she could put a percentage on it. What was my chance? I wanted to know. She said it was really difficult to do that, but if she had to put a percentage on it, she would say it was 1%. Without the support of the people close to me and my found community, I would have definitely given up. They are the ones who encouraged me to keep going. I remember when I was first diagnosed, my husband held me and he told me that no matter what, he would make sure that I would become a mother. So when she told me that I had 1% chance of conceiving, I didn't internalize it. I thought, I have 1% chance of conceiving under your care. And so I went and I continued to seek help. I found somebody else at another well-known institution who was willing to work with me. The issue was that I still didn't have insurance. Insurance is a whole other video, and I'll probably do something just completely dedicated to that because healthcare is really expensive, and let's face it, like, not a lot of people can afford out-of-pocket IVF. So what I was doing was mostly just observing. For about a couple of years until I figured out my insurance situation, I was observing ovulation, observing my hormones, monitoring, and making sure, confirming ovulation every single month. Somehow my body was able to continue ovulating. And I did try out some hormone replacement therapy. And actually on the estrogen, my follicles were more plump, they were bigger, and I was still ovulating. It didn't suppress ovulation as some doctors think it does. At least it didn't do that for me. And then, so what I would do is just timed intercourse. I figured, hey, I'm ovulating. It's confirmed. It's medically confirmed ovulation. Like, I should just be getting pregnant. So I kept trying, until finally I decided to do an out-of-pocket IUI. The IUI didn't work. That's when my doctor went straight to donor eggs. He told me I could be pregnant next month if I wanted to. What he didn't understand is that I didn't want that. So yep, you know it, I found another doctor. And that's when I went to New Hope Fertility Center. Around the same time that I went to New Hope, I was still monitoring because my insurance hadn't kicked in yet. I did fortunately get insurance coverage in the next year, and that's when immediately I had started the IVF process. Starting IVF is really important. Going through retrieval helped get more data to understand what my issue was. They had seen that I was ovulating. They knew that I was a poor responder to any sort of drug that would stimulate the production of FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, because, with primary ovarian insufficiency, FSH is extremely high all the time because your estrogen is very low. And so FSH is the signal from your brain to your ovaries to basically produce estrogen. And when it's really high, it's like your brain is yelling at your ovaries. And when your ovaries basically hear your brain yelling all the time with elevated FSH, it starts to ignore it. Well, unfortunately, in IVF, what they'll do is try to stimulate the FSH to encourage follicle growth and to encourage a lot of follicles to grow. It becomes a numbers game to success. In cases of primary ovarian insufficiency, that just doesn't work. And basically they do natural IVF cycles. Natural just means that there are no real medicines involved to stimulate the FSH and to stimulate follicle growth. And so it was really good for me to finally go through a retrieval process. As difficult as it was and as devastating as that was, I learned a lot about what my issue was. And so what I learned through my first 2 retrievals was that I was ovulating, I was releasing an egg. The egg just didn't have good enough quality. Learning that the quality of my eggs were poor was probably the first time that I was able to really come to terms with my diagnosis. I finally understood why I had been ovulating all of these years without being able to get pregnant. Now that I had something to focus on, I was able to get more targeted treatment to improve my chances. So my doctor recommended an experimental treatment called ovarian rejuvenation, or ovarian PRP, platelet-rich plasma. Basically what they do is they take your blood, they separate it in a centrifuge, and then they inject the plasma directly into your ovaries at different sites. There are some studies that hypothesize that it's the mechanical stimulation that causes the ovaries to basically regenerate. But the treatment itself, the injection of the platelet-rich plasma, is supposed to basically stimulate follicle regrowth and regeneration. My doctor told me that if growth hormones are a bicycle, that PRP is the Rolls-Royce. So I figured I had nothing to lose except $4,000 and I went for it. And I'm so glad that I did, because 3 weeks after treatment, I started growing 4 follicles. Before, I had only grown 1 follicle normally, and maybe 2 if I was really having a great cycle, which was like kind of once in a blue moon. Of those 4 follicles, they were able to retrieve 3 eggs. Of those 3 eggs, they were able to fertilize 2. And of those 2 eggs, 1 developed normally to day 3, and then they froze it. I repeated this, and every month I was able to get 1 embryo. 1 day 3 embryo. And now I have 3. My doctor said that each embryo has a 25 to 30% chance of live birth. Now compare that to what my first reproductive endocrinologist told me, that I had 1% chance of having a baby. And because of my privilege and because I was able to persevere, I am now where I am today. And I want to inspire other women to continue fighting even if they've been given impossible odds. I want to acknowledge that I'm not there yet. This may actually not work out for me. And it's something that I have to come to terms with, along with the reality of the situation. But what I can say is that I've become a much healthier person because of this diagnosis. I'm going to continue persevering, and I'm determined to continue and make sure that I've exhausted all of my options. That's why I want to just say again, if you are going through this, please seek mental health support if you haven't already. Please seek community if you haven't already. It's so difficult to find people who understand you. But when you do find that community, you can finally have a place to go to that will always want to hear what you have to say. They'll always want to be your shoulder to cry on and be your sounding board. So to anyone who's just been diagnosed with primary ovarian insufficiency or another infertility diagnosis, or honestly just anything, I want you to know that it's really important for you to advocate for yourself. You know your body best, and through this process, you're going to get to know your body even better. Don't stop at no. Continue on until you know in your heart that you are done. And I also want you to know that even if you are not a mother yet and you so desperately want to be, that through this fight and through this journey, you are proving that you already are a great mom. This is really not easy, and this video, as long as it is, didn't cover everything that I have to say. There's a ton of research that I've done, and I would love to share everything that I've learned with you. If you liked this video and you're interested in seeing more, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you want to see next, and I'm happy to continue making videos for you. As difficult as this topic was to talk about so vulnerably in a public forum like this, I'm really glad that I did so. It's really important to have these conversations and to make sure that they're public so that other people, when they receive this diagnosis, don't feel as alone. Okay, that's the end of my video. Thank you so much.